Well, welcome to the Unstoppable Freedom Podcast. I'm Jimmy Page. Today we're going to talk about a topic that I'm very passionate about, getting prepared for crisis. Some refer to that as prepping, and a lot of people think that, quote, those people are crazy and they've all moved to the mountains and live completely off the grid. And while there are people like that who may have taken self-reliance to an extreme, with all the chaos in the world, taking some steps to be able to weather some storms sure does seem like a good idea to a growing number of people. Well, our guest today has been in the survival and prepping business for a long time. His name is Joe Rieck, and he's the VP of Sales for the Ready Alliance Group, an organization whose mission is to empower people through self-reliance. Can't think of a more important mission than that today. He's been involved in starting and growing emergency food companies for over 15 years. Joe, welcome to the show.
Jimmy, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me on this morning.
You bet. Hey, so I'm pretty impressed by something I see through the window behind you. It looks like a Jeep Gladiator. I'm a Jeep fan. Tell me a little bit about that.
So this Jeep back here in the picture, that's our rapid response vehicle. So we have a couple of Jeeps outfitted with emergency supplies, first aid kits, survival gear, chainsaws, axes. So if there ever is an emergency, we can deploy our Jeeps out along with our semi-trailers full of food to be able to offer relief and assistance for those who have been affected by natural disaster.
Now, how far does your scope span? You're in Utah. We know you're in the Salt Lake City area. Do you go outside of the state of Utah to respond to emergencies?
All the time. Because, a majority of our business too, Jimmy, it's not within the it's not here in Utah. We service everybody here in the United States. We service, customers up in Canada and frankly, all over the world. We do have customers that do reach out to us outside of the United States that we do make special arrangements to send them our long-term emergency food product for them.
So I wanted to start there because I think it gives our listeners an idea of the length and the depth and the breadth of what you do. To have your own fleet of vehicles, to have semi-trucks that can respond in times of emergency says to me that you're on the leading edge of this idea of being prepared and also being able to respond in the event of crisis. You've personally been at this a long time, and you're committed to this idea of preparation and survival. Was there a catalyst in your life that drove you to become more self-reliant and prepared for crisis?
Growing up in Utah, because of the culture here, I've always been taught to be prepared and to be self-reliant. The major dominant religion here in Utah is the LDS Church, and that is one of the main things that they teach to their members is to be self-sufficient, to be self-reliant, to get prepared for those emergencies because you never know what's going to happen. Yeah. And honestly, it didn't really hit home, Jimmy, until I actually became a dad, a father, and I had to provide food for my kids in times of emergencies. When the economy in 2008 took a nosedive,
yes,
I was left without a job, and that's when I really started to panic and think, goodness, if this can happen to me, and it wasn't even a natural disaster, I just happened to lose a job because of the economy. I thought, holy cow, what am I going to do to take care of my kids? And what am I going to do to still provide food on the table for them? And that's when I got involved with emergency food. And honestly, it's been the biggest blessing of my life. It's been able to provide a great living for me and my family, but also it's provided me with the peace of mind that if anything were to happen to me and my family, I know that we will be okay. And that's just something you can't buy. It's a piece of mind that only comes from doing and comes from acting and following through with plans.
Yeah. You mentioned being a dad, and I think that is a moment for most men where, marriage is one level of commitment. It's one level of preparation. It's one level of responsibility. And then when you bring kids into it and you feel responsible, right? We're responsible, we're accountable, and we're capable. I think those are three pieces of what it means to be a man. I think having those kids and then encountering that crisis like you did in 2008, where your economic stability changed. How nice is it to know that you can take care of the basic needs of your family no matter what the crisis is?
And that's exactly what we do. That's what we've been trying to educate customers for the past 15 years is there's things that you can do every single day as long as you have a game plan. And one of the things that I've learned over the years of doing this, Jimmy, is you got to keep it simple. There's a lot of things that you can do. Emergency preparedness is multifaceted. And there's a phrase that we use here at Ready Alliance Group that that says emergency preparedness is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
And starting off small, starting off what you're able to do, what you're able to budget for you and your family, starting off small is the best way to do it. And what I tell customers that call in all the time is keep it simple, but get your bases covered. So for example, like if you're a family and you want to have an emergency food supply for you and your family, and if you feel comfortable having a 3-month supply, great. There's no rule to say how much or how little you need to have. It's completely up to you and your family. But once you decide on what you will feel comfortable with, focus your energy and your attention on getting your basics covered. Don't worry about the auxiliary items, like all the convenient items, like fruits and vegetables, all that stuff. Get your bases covered. Get the basic stuff, breakfast, lunches, and dinners for that time frame. Once that's established, then you can go build out and get the things that are going to make your life a lot more convenient, a lot easier, seem more like normal, if that makes sense.
So I think we're pretty soft. I mean, kind of as a whole, right? I mean, we've had this level of convenience. We've had this level of life is good to an extent. Life is easy. Stuff gets delivered to the grocery store. I go pick it up. Stuff comes to us. I mean, my gosh, we don't even have to leave the house anymore to get food and supplies. But the truth is, I think COVID was a real wake-up call for a lot of people, don't you think? I remember
100%.
At first, I remember when there was a run on the paper products, right? First it was toilet paper and tissues and then hand sanitizer because God forbid we can't clean our hands. I remember those early days of trying to figure out what COVID was. But when the supply chain was affected, when businesses were closed down and your normal routines were completely shut down or upended, do you think that COVID played a part in waking people up to this idea that they needed to be prepared?
100%. 2020 was a phenomenal year for people to really understand how fragile our system really is. Because if you think back 40 years ago, 30 years ago, grocery stores, they would stock up all their stuff that they would be able to sell out through an entire week. About 20, 30 years ago, they moved to a different type of inventory system called JIT, which is just in time. These grocery stores, these guys are smart. I mean, they have algorithms and they have technology that can almost calculate to the can of soup that they're going to sell on any given day. And they plan their inventory accordingly. So when disruptions happen, like, for example, that toilet paper fiasco that we went through in 2020, everybody was up in arms about wanting to get toilet paper. Well, their computer systems, their algorithms didn't account for that. And so they only ordered what they're used to selling. And so when everybody started going to the grocery stores and getting toilet paper, they ran out of inventory and they ran out fast. Yeah. And it really opened up a lot of people's minds.
Joe, I remember. I was one of those guys. I mean, I remember I probably had, a week or so of toilet paper. And then you feel stupid. Like, I'm really going to the store for toilet paper right now? Like,
hey, they're necessities, though. As silly as it sounds, it opened up a lot of people's eyes because look what happened. Since 2020, look at the things that have happened since then. Right now, even this year of 2022, there's been over 26 manufacturing facilities that have been destroyed. And these are not small manufacturing facilities. These are manufacturing facilities that process chicken, that process beef, that process food that we use on an everyday basis. And right now, I bet your audience will think about going back to the grocery stores. Go back to the grocery stores and think about the times that you've been there when you've noticed that products that are always on the shelf, they're not there anymore. Yes. Or the supply is just not there anymore. People are starting to see that and they're starting to wake up a little bit. Yeah. I wish they would wake up a little bit more to it and understand how fragile things really, really are, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And here's the thing too, Jimmy, is that it doesn't have to be a global pandemic to cause you to get prepared. What I've learned over the years, and I've heard countless stories from customers over the years saying, gosh, my husband got really, really sick and he couldn't work anymore, but we still needed to provide food for the family. I mean, this is a great supplement. Does that family whose dad who lost their job or who got really sick, does that event not qualify that family for an emergency? Absolutely it does. Yeah. And so opening up your vision and kind of taking off the blinders, it helps you realize how fragile things are. But here's what I've also learned too, though, Jimmy, is that Nobody is going to care more about your survival than yourself. If you think the government's going to come bail you out after a flood or after a hurricane, you're going to be waiting a very, very long time for help to come.
Yes.
You got to take the initiative. You got to put on your own work boots, and you got to do the work for you and your family.
Yes.
It's like on an airplane. When the stewardess holds that oxygen mask, they say, put on your own oxygen mask first before you help others.
Yes.
That's the same type of idea. Get you and your family prepared. Make sure your family is taken care of. Then you can be able to go out and help others as well.
I love that principle. I've written down a number of times over the last year, or actually the last 2 years since COVID came, this quote: "No one is coming to save you."
100% true.
And as soon as and I would consider myself someone who has prepared over time in various ways. I think I've taken this idea of food and water and safety a lot more seriously over the last couple of years because I've seen what's happening. And like you said, you've had this disruption to the supply lines. Some of it seems intentional. I mean, my gosh, you can't make this stuff up anymore, right?
It seems every week something else comes down. It's like, okay, what else can we pile on? I mean,
Right.
even back in COVID, it was COVID, then it was the murder hornets, and then the supply chain. And even this year, the wheat supply for what's going on in the Ukraine, the ports being backed up with cargo ships not able to offload their freight. I mean, Jimmy, we live in a world where things are so intertwined that if one spool breaks, the whole system goes down. And that's not a good way to live.
It certainly isn't. And what I've found is, and it's kind of become my mantra, is that preparedness equals freedom. I have
100%.
this, and you mentioned it. You said that it brings peace of mind. I mean, I can sleep at night knowing that I have food in storage for emergencies up to many months actually now, that I have clean water, that I have the ability to filter water. I mean, there's a lot of considerations, but I think you said it best when you started. You said, keep it simple, kind of look at where you're at right now. And if you're starting from scratch, I think the best thing is, what type of time frame? I mean, you mentioned it. What type of time frame do you want to have what you're going to need to survive and then work towards getting to that place? Is that where you recommend people start?
100%. And like I said, there's just not a one size fits all package for every family out there. Every family is going to have different needs, different values, different ideas of what they would feel secure with. And whatever your family decides to do, set that as your goal. It's interesting though, because over the years, I've watched what the Red Cross has kind of taught, people on how to get prepared. 10 years ago, the Red Cross would recommend getting at least a 3-day supply for every member of your family. Then all of a sudden the hurricanes happen. And then after the hurricanes happened and they saw how much effort it takes to mobilize and to really help people out, they came back and said, wait a second, now let's get a week and a half. Let's get a week supply for everybody in your household. And then a couple of months ago, they just barely came out and said, hey, a week would be great, but really you need to have several weeks worth of food, worth of supplies in your home at any given moment, because we know that it takes time. That when things happen, it takes time to get things back on course. And if you can prepare for that, you're going to be in a lot better situation than your neighbors are.
It's interesting you talk about the Red Cross. First of all, I would guess that almost no one knows what the Red Cross guidelines or recommendations are. And how great would it be if we actually were focusing on something like that as a nation? I mean, even in our school systems, to get our kids more self-reliant rather than this victim ideology that we're teaching our kids today, which is just disgusting. I mean, there's so many issues in our school systems. It's why so many people are leaving the school systems, because they're not preparing our kids for life. But one thing you mentioned is that I think is important. Every family, when they make this decision about what level of preparation they want to have, I think it's really important to involve the kids. Would you agree with that?
100%, because it empowers them to be involved. It gets them excited about it. And the cool thing is too, I've had several customers call me up after they had made a purchase and they said, hey, look, Joe, we got the meals. We prepared them as a family. We learned how to do it. We taught our kids how to do it, because if something were to happen to mom and dad, the kids can prepare these meals. And that's the beauty about the product that we manufacture here at our facility is we manufacture the long-term emergency meals. So this is the stuff, Jimmy, that you purchase It has up to a 25-year shelf life. Okay. And when you're ready to prepare these meals, you simply add it to boiling water. So as long as you don't burn the water, you're going to have a delicious meal ready within minutes. And,
Mm.
it's something that kids need to learn and kids need to understand too. And I love when I get those types of letters or those types of phone calls from past customers that said, hey, we took a family night. We went through our emergency supplies. We showed the kids, we got the kids put together their own 72-hour kits, their emergency backpacks, and it becomes a great family learning time, to build those relationships. And all it does too is it helps those kids feel more secure and more safe because they hear what's going on. They may not understand everything and they don't really need to understand. But the thing that they do need to understand is that mom and dad are going to take care of them and that their family is a safe place.
I love that, and I think that's one of the things as a mom or as a dad that we take great pride in is preparing our kids for life, right? It's
Right.
it's anticipating the circumstances that they may face and giving them the skill set, giving them the way of thinking, giving them the resourcefulness so that they can take control of their own path. And what better way than to take care of the basic needs that they're going to have in the event that something goes wrong? So let's say you've got little older kids. Let's say maybe they're grown adults, but they're across the country. And, I have kids that are in their 20s. And my youngest is 19 now. She's at college. So I'm concerned because she's across the country. She goes to Liberty University in Virginia. We live in Colorado. We're practically neighbors, Joe. So I'm going to be coming up to Utah. But, they're across the country, right? And so I'm concerned about getting them prepared. Isn't that one of the missions of this, is that regardless of where you are, you can be ready?
Absolutely. And that's the beautiful thing about what we do here with our long-term food storage product. We have several moms who are in your exact same situation, Jimmy, where they're sending their kids off across the country, but they still want to make sure that they're going to be taken care of. And so they'll send their kids with a couple of these pails that they can leave underneath their bed in their dorms. They can put them, they can send them with a survival backpack that has basic stuff, a couple of food ration bars, a couple pouches of emergency water, flashlights, first aid kits, things like that. Because if something were to happen there, wherever they're going to school at, mom and dad will know that they're going to be taken care of, that they have at least, a little bit of some emergency supplies with them. And,
I love
the
that.
cool thing about this too is it doesn't take up a lot of space. I mean, you look at some of these pouches that I have here, you send them with 3 or 4 of these pouches inside of a backpack. I mean, there's enough pancakes in here for 10 people right here. So
listen, they're going to be super popular in the dorm if that's true.
But again, here's the reason why we do this, though, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Is it creates, again, like I said in the beginning, that peace of mind, knowing that if anything were to go wrong, you can still survive. Yes. And that's really what we try to educate here at the Ready Alliance Group.
So I love the products, right? I'm a fan, and I've done a lot of research on this because it's really important that you're buying quality products. There is a difference between the companies. What are some of the things that separate you all from your competitors with respect to food storage, with respect to water filtration, that type of thing?
Well, here's the thing that really separates us from everybody else is we do everything here internally. We manufacture our own meals here in our facility. We package our own meals here. We own our own filtration company. We do it all. One of the cool things here is, with My Patriot Supply, who is our flagship company, that's probably one of the largest emergency food storage companies in the country. And I would probably venture to guess in the world, because I don't think there's any country outside of the United States that takes emergency preparedness as seriously as we do here. So we do a phenomenal job of making sure that we have products available for consumers. Because again, we learned in 2020 that you can never be too prepared. Even 2020 took us by surprise. Nobody was anticipating that. And after going through that exercise, we sat down and we said, look, that's never going to happen again to us. We are a preparedness company, and we are going to be prepared here on out. And we've lived up to that over the past couple of years. We're the only company right now that has, strategic distribution centers throughout the country. Our main facility is here in Salt Lake City, and we have distribution centers throughout the country. So what that does for the consumers and for our customers is when they order, whether it be for, through you guys or whether it be through any of our affiliates out there, they can get their order within 2 days. There's only one other company that I know of that can deliver in 2 days. and we can do that as well. And it's because of the mindset that we have here. We are passionate about what we do. We are our preppers ourselves. That's how
Yeah.
we got started into this. And we try to find solutions that are going to be helpful for the people that we serve.
It's amazing how important those distribution centers are, especially when supply lines are compromised, right? And I have bought product from other companies, and I can tell you it has literally taken me weeks
Weeks.
to get supplies. Now, I can tell you when I'm ordering the product, I'm not ordering it because I don't think I need it. I'm ordering the product because I have a sense, maybe a sense of urgency to restock or resupply. So one of the things with My Patriot Supply, it's one of the reasons why we are an affiliate, because for us, having that product get to the end user, get to the buyer as quickly as possible, especially under conditions that you're anticipating something might be happening, is essential.
100%. We learned our lesson back in 2020, because one
Yeah.
of the things that we were struggling with was getting trucks to come to our facility here to be able to take our product to our distribution centers. And it was causing tremendous issues. And so the owner of the company said, you know what? We're going to take control of it. We're going to put it in our hands. He said, Joe, go out and go get us some semis. So we end up getting a fleet of semi trucks. So now we have our own semi trucks that we feed our own distribution centers with.
Wow.
And again, along with our Jeep Gladiators, we are prepared so that way we can respond and we can take control, because we know that nobody's going to do it better than what we can do, and nobody's going to care more about it than we are. So
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why we try to do what we do. And it's been an amazing opportunity. The owner of the company is phenomenal. I mean, he's one of the most thoughtful, giving guys I've ever met before, and he's passionate about helping others.
So we're at a stage kind of in our, in the world where things are unstable. It doesn't take much, research to figure out that things are kind of coming unglued. There's a lot of uncertainty. When you look at the average American or the average American family, what is a typical family at this point? What percentage of Americans are prepared at all, even for like that 3-day time frame or that 30-day time frame? What percentage would you say of Americans are prepared properly?
Well, are you sitting down? Because listen to this. We're through our estimates, there's probably less than 8% of Americans that are prepared. Less than 8%. So again, 2020 opened up a lot of people's eyes to it, but there's still so many people out there who have no idea what's going on. They have no idea that emergency food is even a thing. They have no idea that bad things can happen.
Right.
And so we're working around the clock to try to educate customers, to try to say, hey, look, guys, things are coming down the pipeline. It's time to get prepared, and it's time to do it now, because you don't know what is going to happen in the future. You don't know what's going to be available. So the time to do it is right now. And I can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
And, I hate saying this, Jimmy. I really do hate saying this. I hate being right. Over the course of my career being in this industry, we have been right more often than not. And I hate being right when we say, hey guys, something's going to be happening. We saw that, back in 2011 with the tsunami in Japan. That was crippling to a lot of the supply chains. We were telling people to get prepared back then. 2020, something else happens, so things happen. You just got to be prepared for it. We can't control those. We can't control that.
I don't want to be right either, but I do want to be ready. So I would much rather be ready. You can steal that little tagline.
I like it.
We want to be ready. And I think there is absolutely a peace of mind. I mean, I got to tell you, Joe, I sleep better because I know I've got water for 100 days. I know, and that's, by the way, I have water for 100 days without having to filtrate anything, and so I feel better about that. Let me ask you this. We have a game plan to get our kids home in the event that some really bad things happen, right? Obviously, number one, you want to shelter in place if you can in a safe way. But in the event that they come home, part of my planning centers around being ready to have more than just my wife and I, since we're empty nesters now. We're planning to have kids come back, or we're planning to help neighbors. How important is it? Why is that mindset important? As a believer, as a Christian, I believe that it's really important that we help our neighbors. It's part of loving your neighbor as yourself. Part of the reason I'm preparing is so that I can help my neighbors. Not only am I telling them to get prepared, but in the event that they're not prepared, I want to have more than enough so that I can help. Is that part of the philosophy of your organization?
Oh, absolutely it is. We're big believers in karma. What comes around goes around. If you take the initiative and you make sure that you and your family are prepared first, and you have the ability to add on and to supplement, you're going to be faced with a time when people are going to be coming knocking out at your door. And,
Yes.
I want to be in a position to know that my family is going to be taken care of, but I also want to know that I'm going to be in a position to be able to help my neighbors, because the
Yes.
more people that are prepared, the better off everybody is going to be every
Yes.
single time. And
Yes.
so I always tell customers, they say, well, gosh, I only need this much. And I say, well, it's going to, if you ration it out, you may
Mm.
have an opportunity to help others. And I'm
Yeah.
a big believer that when you give others and you serve others, it comes back to you 10 times. It's just
Yes.
the way that it works. I'm
Yeah.
a Christian guy as well. I'm a big
Yes.
believer that, when you do nice things for others without any, wanting to get anything in return, the Lord's going
Yes.
to bless you. And
Yeah.
we've been fortunate enough to be able to have the supply for me and my family, and a little bit extra for those that may come knocking. And I just want to make sure that I'm prepared for that as well.
How important is it that you communicate with your neighbors? Like, for example, in my neighborhood, we're not only looking at food and water, of course, we're looking at medical supplies. We're looking at being able to protect what we have, through self-defense, security, those types of things. How important is it that you share this with your neighbors so that in the event of a real emergency, there isn't chaos in your neighborhoods? How important is that?
Well, living here in Utah, we have a strong we have a strong influence here with the LDS Church, and
Yeah,
again, they're super big about teaching that self-reliance. And
preparation.
at least here in Utah, they do have systems in place. They do have neighborhood watches. They do have neighborhood
Mm.
emergency coordinators that are in charge, of a section of homes that they're kind of their go-to guy, and they kind of check in with
Wow.
them every once in a while, make sure that they're doing okay. But incorporating those types of things in your own community are so
Mm.
beneficial, because
Yeah.
again, when disaster strikes or when emergencies happen, you want to be confident, you want to be calm, you want to have a game plan. You don't want to
Yes.
just be left without, knowing what to do or where to start. And
Yeah.
by writing down plans right now, start with your own family. I love that you have
Mhm.
an emergency family plan for you guys, to where if something happens, hey, everybody's coming home. This is home base. If home
Yes.
base gets destroyed, we're going to go to location B. Talk
Yes.
about those things with your family.
Mm.
We're going back to school here in a couple of months, and they
Mhm.
always teach you in school too, have a plan for the kids. Let the kids know that if mom and
Yes.
dad don't, come pick you up, that you're going to have a neighbor that's going to come pick you up, somebody that you can trust, somebody that that has a code word or a password to let you know that, hey, I'm okay to go with this person.
Yes.
Talk about these things with your kids. Talk about it with your spouses. Come up with a game plan. 30 years ago, Jimmy, you'd be considered one of the crazy guys,
Huh.
one of the
Ah,
conspiracy guys wanting to get prepared.
yeah. Yeah.
Now, you're crazy not to want to get prepared, because of
Yes.
how fast and how quickly things can change.
Yes. And we see what happens when people are afraid, right? Fear is a tremendous motivator. I mean, fear before things happen can be a positive motivator because it leads you to get prepared, right? So
Right.
you know that things could happen, so I'm getting ready. But fear in the moment of crisis is terribly destructive. How great would it be? A lot of times people say, "Well, you're going to scare the kids by helping them prepare." And I'm like, "By empowering my kids, I'm going to scare them." Okay. Yeah, how about instead, it's actually giving them this tremendous confidence and this ability, this capability to take care of themselves and a knowledge of what to do in the event of an emergency. I don't think there could be anything more important right now, especially seeing the things that are happening in the world and getting our kids prepared so they're not afraid of what's coming.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head with that one. You're empowering your kids to have the confidence to
Yeah,
know what to do in those types of situations.
yeah,
And when you can empower your kids to do things, what is that going to do for them? It's going to give them the confidence that they need. It's going to
yes,
give them the security that they need. It's also going to give them the ability to have the confidence to go through those hard things. You're just
yeah,
teaching them you're just setting up for success rather than failure.
yeah. So if you were to give advice to someone, let's say there are listeners, I mean, according to your statistics, 92% of our listeners probably are not prepared whatsoever for crisis. And I believe that's true, by the way. What I have, I'm going to ask you what you should do. Like if you were to tell someone who hasn't done anything yet, where would you tell them to focus their attention and what time frame? But one thing I've discovered from people recently, especially in the last 6 months, everyone, when you bring this up, they will say things feel different. Don't you feel like things, I mean, we've been around a long time. Things feel different today than they did 20 years ago with respect to emergency preparation.
100%. And I can't tell you how many phone calls or how many calls we get on the daily basis where customers say that exact thing. They'll say, Joe, never in my life would I thought I'd be calling an emergency preparedness company. But something in my gut, I have this feeling that I cannot shake. I have this feeling that I need to get prepared. I mean, that's a conversation that if you go stand out over here in our call center, you will hear customers say that time and time again. Yes. There's a feeling out there that people are sensing that something is just not right. And you look around the world today and you can see why they're feeling that way. You know, earlier this year, Russia invaded the Ukraine. That puts a lot of people up in arms. And here's the thing with that not a lot of people know about. The Ukraine supplies 30% of the global wheat exports, 80% of the sunflower oil exports. And since Russia invaded Ukraine, only one shipment has left. And that only happened last week where one shipment was cleared to leave. Now, we haven't even seen the effects of the shortage of wheat supplies yet. That's coming down the pipeline because things happen. There's always a moment of time for it actually to catch up. We haven't even seen the effects of the war over there in the Ukraine. We haven't seen the effects yet of the shortages of wheat, the shortages of barley, the shortages of oats. They're coming. In fact, I bet you a lot of your audience and a lot of your listeners go to the grocery store and go look at the meat supply. Go look at the meat section. And I guarantee you the supply that you're used to seeing is not there anymore. They're dwindling and they're getting smaller and smaller. And so we're going to be in a world of hurt. Inflation is up over 40, the highest it's been in 40 years. Gas prices is going up. What does that mean? Well, think about the farmer. If the farmer budgets, he can only spend $5,000 a year in gas. I'm just throwing out numbers here. He can only spend $5,000 for fuel. And if fuel goes up 40%, it's now going to cost him $10,000. If he does not have that money, he's not going to be able to plant his entire yield of what he's able to do on his farm. He's going to plant what he's able to grow. So now the supply that he's able to produce just barely got shrunk by about 40%. You spread that across all the farmers here in the United States, we're going to be in a world of hurt as far as food supplies coming. We're not going to see it yet, but it's going to be coming down the road.
Do you have a sense? So I agree with that. And I've spoken with other major farmers like Alfie with Seed to Table, who farms a tremendous amount of acreage in Florida. He's cutting his farming back by something like 60 or 70% because of the cost of fertilizer, because of the cost of gas. And what time frame are we talking about? I mean, obviously you don't have a crystal ball, but what kind of time frame are we talking about where we actually see these significant shortages in food on the shelves?
We're beginning to see a little bit of it right now, and I've mentioned this before because I see it in my own local grocery stores. I've noticed that boxes of Kraft macaroni and cheese, they used to be like 12 deep on the shelf. Now they're like 3 deep. They're putting out signs. They're saying, hey, limit 2 per customer. They're starting to see the effects of that. I don't know when we're going to see the full brunt of that, Jimmy, but, usually there's about a 4 to 5 month delay from when things go on like that. So, come the end of the year, I think we're going to be looking at a completely different landscape than what we're looking at right now.
Yeah, so there's no better time than right now to get ready. It takes me all the way back to when I was a little boy. My grandparents had a dairy farm in central New York. Amazing, being able to spend summers there with my brother and being able to kick around and do all the things that you would do on a dairy farm was really amazing.
Learn how to work.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, that alone, right? My gosh. Every kid in America should spend at least 2 or 3 summers
spend a
on
summer
a farm.
on a farm. Yep, go spend a summer on a farm and learn what hard work is. I don't know how those guys do it because they do it day in and day out, and they do it for their entire lifetime. That's a different breed, man. That's a different breed. These hands don't have calluses like that. I'll tell you what.
Listen, buddy, it's time to get ready, right?
It's time to
I
get
remember when my grandfather, when my grandparents passed, and we were at their farmhouse. First of all, they almost never took a day off. So they, to your point, they couldn't leave the farm unless they had coverage with other workers. So just an amazing way of life. But they had a different emotional and mental health about them, I think, than a lot of us do. We worry about stupid things where they were actually concerned with with things that mattered. But I remember when
They
we
went
were,
through it. They went through it with the
yeah,
Great Depression. They went through the times
yes,
where they didn't have groceries. They went through
yes,
the time where they didn't have jobs, where they didn't have money to
yes,
afford things, and they had to make things work. I
yes.
remember hearing stories as well from my grandparents where all they had for dinner one night was flour mixed in with water. Like,
Oh,
those are times that we can't even
yes.
comprehend.
No.
The internet goes out for an hour and everybody's up in arms about it.
Oh, oh yeah.
It's a
It's
different
funny
life.
because when we were clearing out their house after they both had passed, they had rooms in their farmhouse stocked with mason jars, so that in a
Yes.
pinch they could can and they could do preserves, and they would have enough food. In fact, they had what they call it, a cellar. Oh
So, yeah.
shoot,
Food cellar, cold
um,
cellar.
a cold cellar, right? And they would have enough food and supplies in that space to be able to make it through the winter. Depending upon the crop yield for that year. So they had a different level of preparation because they had experienced a different level of lack. And I don't believe, I'm not a doomer. I'm not a doomsdayer. I'm actually an optimist, but I'm kind of an end times optimist. Hey, things are kind of happening and they're kind of, suspicious. So let's be ready and let's be a blessing to others. Um, you, let's talk a little bit about farms because you talked about this supply side really taking hit. Bill Gates buying up a tremendous amount of farmland in America, doesn't even believe in producing meat, real meat anymore, believes it should be engineered. We've got China buying up tremendous amount of farmland in America. Does that concern you? Does it affect you? Does it concern you at all that that's happening?
Absolutely. And there's a quote that has been thrown around over the past couple of years, and I think it rings true today.
Hmm.
Control the food supply, control the people.
Wow.
Hands down, that's exactly what it is. If you can control the food supply, Jimmy, you can control the people. I mean, you look
Hmm.
back into history and you look back at these dictators, these
Yes.
communist people, where one person, one organization was in charge of it all for everybody.
Yeah.
People that survive those types of things, they will flat out tell you that's not the way to live. That is
Yeah.
not the way to be prosperous.
Yeah.
You need to empower people to become self-reliant
Yes.
because, like you said
Yeah.
earlier, and I love it, being self-reliant is freedom. It's freedom because you're
Yes.
not beholden to anybody. You're not waiting on anybody else to come bail you out. You're taking the initiative to do things for yourself, and
Yes.
there's no price for that freedom. But yes,
That's right.
control the food supply, control the people, and you watch
Yeah.
what's going to be happening. You watch as they start making these changes and they start
Mhm.
tightening their grip, because once people have a little bit of power, Jimmy, what do they
Yeah.
want more of? They want
Yeah.
more of that power. And the way to get
Yes.
that power is by controlling people. And again,
Yes.
that's exactly why we fight so hard and why we've been fighting so hard for so long to educate people to become self-sufficient, become self-reliant, get out of
Yes.
debt, get some food
Yes.
supplies stocked up, come up with the game plans, but more importantly, get out of debt, be
Yeah.
self-sufficient 100%.
Yeah. It's interesting. People of faith oftentimes will push back a little bit on this idea of preparation. And then I ask the questions, well, are you saving in your 401k? Are you saving for retirement? And they'll be, oh, of course. Oh, so you're preparing for retirement. I got you. You're prepping.
Oh,
And then
oh,
on it, do
you're
you
not
have,
prepping that way.
right? Oh yeah. That's wise. Right? That's prudence. Do you have car insurance? Oh, of course. Why? Well, I'm prepared in the event that I have an. Oh, you're prepared in the event you have an accident. I got you.
See,
And
and
then on right.
that's an analogy that I love because, again, I love the car insurance analogy. We don't buy
Yeah.
car insurance hoping that we're going to get into an accident.
Right.
It's the same reason we don't buy emergency food hoping that we're going to have
Right.
supply chain disruptions. We buy it just in case. We buy car insurance
Yes.
just in case we happen to find ourselves in that situation. We know that we're going to
Yes.
be taken care of. Same thing with
Yeah.
emergency supplies. We don't buy these supplies because we're doomsdayers. We don't buy these
Right.
supplies because we think the world is going to all of a sudden end and we're going to have zombies chasing us. Absolutely not.
Right.
Our zombies are going to be the government. Our zombies
Yeah.
are going to be people who want to take away our freedoms. Those are the
Yes.
zombies that we're fighting against.
That's right. I agree with that. And so let's do this. Let's wrap it with just some simple steps. If somebody's new to this idea, but they're leaning in and they're saying, "Boy, what could I do right now to take a couple of steps to get in the game?" What couple steps would you recommend that they do to get prepared?
Well, first, I would recommend your audience to click on your link that'll take us to My Patriot Supply. Click on the link
Yes.
that you provide them because that's going to take them to our website, My Patriot Supply. MyPatriotSupply.com. We have everything to get you started with. We have kits as small as 3-day kits. We have kits up to a year supply. We have freeze-dried fruits, freeze-dried vegetables, freeze-dried meats. We have power supply options. We have water purification systems. We have emergency backpacks. We have everything that you would need to get started. And if you need a little bit of help, we have preparedness specialists waiting to answer the phones, waiting to talk to you and your family to come up with a game plan that works best for you and your family. Call us. We're here to help. We have knowledge. We have extensive experience on getting people prepared. I mean, we've been
Yeah.
doing this for a number of years. We have resources. We have checklists. We have first aid guides, what you should do in an emergency, whether it's a hurricane, what to do in a flood, what to do when the power goes out. We have all these resources on our website that you can learn and you can understand. But the biggest thing that I would suggest to your audience is to get started now. If you can't afford a 3-month supply for you and your family, start off with a week. Build
Yes.
upon it over time. Like I said, preparedness, it's a journey, not a destination. And
Yes.
just like everybody else, I have to budget just like everybody else. I have to put aside money just like everybody else, but I put the
Yes.
money towards things that are going to help me be better prepared. Get your
I
bases
love
covered
that.
first and foremost. If you want a year supply, work on getting breakfast, lunches, and dinners for an entire year before you start worrying about power, before you start worrying about fruits, before you start worrying about vegetables. Get the things that are going to give you what you need to survive.
I love that. And one of the things I love about My Patriot Supply, it's why we've formed this alliance, is that there are steps that you can take. There's plenty of resources. It's very reliable. I've had to change some priorities in my life. I've had to change the way I spend my resources so that I can be more prepared, because I want that peace of mind. And it doesn't take much. I will tell you that it doesn't take much. I had a challenge from a guy. I said, "Gosh, I feel like I'm so far behind." This is quite some time ago now. I said, "Are we within 90 days of a crisis?" And this was a while back. And I said, "What can I possibly get done in 90 days?" And he laughed. He said, "Oh my gosh." He said, "I'll tell you what, you will be shocked at how prepared you can get in just 90 days. In fact, I would say now, knowing what I know now, and being as prepared as I am, you would be shocked at how prepared you can be in 30 days, in two
Right.
weeks,
Right.
with just being able to go to this site and be able to pick things just to get rolling. You will have peace of mind in a very short order."
100%. Again, Jimmy, it all boils down to you got to do the work.
Yeah.
We'll provide you with all the resources, all the knowledge, but you got to make that decision to want to do it.
Yeah.
You got to take the steps because, like I said in the beginning, nobody's going to care more about your survival than yourself.
Yes.
But
Yes.
luckily, you have My Patriot Supply that can guide you through that process. We can walk you through every step of the way, and we're here. I mean, we have over 40,000, 50,000 4 and 5-star reviews on our product.
It's
We have
amazing.
people that have used this product in an emergency. And honestly,
Mm-hmm.
2020 was really, really hard for a lot of people,
Yep.
but also it was really reassuring that we're on the right track because I would
Yes.
get letters from people who
Mm-hmm.
said, "Gosh, Joe, because of your product, I was able to continue to live because I was afraid to leave my house, or an elderly grandparent that was afraid of getting sick because they were at health risks, and they couldn't leave. So they
Yes.
lived off of your emergency food and they thrived off of it."
It's
And it's
amazing.
those responses, those letters that really reinforce that, gosh, we are trying to make a difference. And that's why we do what
Yeah.
we do.
Well, you really are making a difference, and I'm super grateful for our partnership. I will say it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when there will be additional crisis. It's just the nature of life. You can't predict it, but what you can do is get ready for it. So Joe, hey, thanks, man. Thanks so much for today. This is going to be a huge shot in the arm for our community, for our listeners. And I know that what you've shared today is going to help them get more and more prepared.
Well, Jimmy, I appreciate it. We love what we do. We're passionate about what we do. And, if we can help just one family,
yes,
we've done our job, but at the same time, you got to take the steps to do it. Do it now. I don't know how much more I can scream from the top of my lungs that things are coming. Get it now while you can, because time is running short, unfortunately.
It is. Joe, thanks for the encouragement today. Thanks for getting our folks in motion to take the steps necessary to get ready. And until next time, my friend, God bless you.
Hey, thanks so much, Jim. You guys be safe, and we're here whenever you guys need us.
You bet.